to start?
Good evening. This is the regular meeting of the Administration and Public Works Committee, January 12th, 2015. We have a quorum, and could we get a motion to approve the minutes of December the 8th?
Motion to approve minutes from December 8th, 2014.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Are there any additions, corrections, deletions? Seeing none and seeing no lights, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, our first item for consideration today is A1, which is the city payroll. There'd be three items. November payroll through November 30th, 2014 is $2,615,630.57. Payroll through December 14th is $2,637,436.82. And payroll through December 28th is $2,591,719.85. Move approval. Second. It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. A2 is the bills for the city of Evanston through January 13th, it must be 2015. I'm sure it's 2015. There has to be a typo, right?
There's two sets.
You're right.
Oh, yeah.
It needs to be 2015.
I think it is. It is two sets. One says 2014 and one says 2015, though. I'm not sure.
Because we spent money in 2014.
2014, okay. So the first one is $4,932,715.24, and the second one is through January 13th, $2,503,241.52. Move approval. Okay, it's been moved and second. There were questions from the bills list. We do have copies in front of us. It was also sent out earlier on the email. Are there any questions on that? Alderman Grover.
Just that I appreciate the inclusion of the photo
Yes, of the truck.
of the truck in the bills list. Thank you for that.
Madam Chair.
All right. Alderman Rainey?
For example, almost every time when there's a purchase of a vehicle, I ask, what vehicle is this? And I get this long explanation. I know that we approved it, and I know that we needed it, otherwise we wouldn't approve it. But I don't know what vehicle 742 is. So all I want to know is if they want to put a picture in, that's fine, but a paragraph about all the details to remind us, it's not necessary for me. I just want to know which vehicle, which department. But
Okay.
I have another question.
All right, go ahead, Alderman Rainey.
All right. I think I need just a little bit better explanation. I mean, this was too good of an explanation. It's over my head. Just need an explanation about the Northwest Water Commission true-up. I just didn't quite understand
Okay. Director
how
Stone?
that worked. Just it's real simple, Dave.
For each beginning of the service year, we estimate what the cost will be
To provide.
to provide, and we charge them that cost throughout the service year. At the end of the service year, we look at actual cost and actual quantity of water pumped, and then make an adjustment to it. And the Northwest Water Commission bill is comprised of three different components: a return on rate, a depreciation charge, and a quantity charge. So it only affects the quantity charge portion of that bill.
So according to the chart, then out of the last 6 years, is that not, well, out of the last 6 years, goes to away to 2014. 4 times it's been to our advantage and 2 times not, right?
That is correct. We underestimated, we could have collected the money throughout the year, so it's just truly correcting an estimated payment over time.
Anything else on that, Alderman Rainey?
So we reimbursed, right?
This year, we are reimbursing money that they overpaid.
So they used a lot less water than we thought?
They
Or our
actually used a
costs-
little bit more water than what we thought, but our expenses
our
were
costs
lower
were
than what we
less.
thought.
Okay, all right, all right. I think that might have been a problem. All right, I really understand it now, okay.
Seeing no more lights, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Alderman Brathwaite?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move item A, 3.1, approval of the agreement with Rose Pest Solutions for citywide rodent control services for the city of Evanston in the amount of $22,880.
It's been moved and second, seeing no lights, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I ask to move A 3.2, approval of the 2015 CIPP sewer rehabilitation contract with Instaform Technologies USA in the amount of $310,979.10.
The second. Second. It's been moved and second, Alderman Grover?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Stonebeck and I discussed this one earlier today. My concern is that by not accepting the lowest bid price, we are paying a premium, we are paying additional $44,000 almost we're investing an additional $44,000 in this contract to, based upon best estimates, be able to produce about $5,800 in wages for an Evanston residents pursuant to our MWEBE. That is the additional cost on this contract, because it's MWEBE compliant, is almost $44,000. And I can't help but wonder if there's a better way for us to invest $44,000, not in in situ form, but some other way, because $44,000 to produce $5,800 in wages, the way it's worked out under this contract is troublesome for me. And we all agree that our MWEBE policy and the program is a good one. In this case, I'm not sure it makes sense. Help me understand, am I missing something? The lowest qualified responsive bid is $267,000. Staff is recommending, because of the MWEBE compliance, in situ form technologies for $310,979, difference of $43,939.
I'm sorry, City Manager, you want to respond to that?
If I may, Alderman Holmes, members of the committee. Alderman Grover, I believe you're reading this exactly correct. The staff reviewed this when the bids came in. We felt that we really couldn't recommend, once again, waiving the requirement. The council's made it clear this is important. We agree. And given the way the program is currently constructed, it's either accept the bid or reject the bid. We have in the past offered sort of a middle ground solution, and Mr. Stonebeck perhaps can speak to that. But in this instance, we just didn't feel comfortable. These things happen. We don't want to presuppose the council's policies, and the council's policies in this instance indicate that since the lower bidders, I believe, Mr. Stonebeck, there were 2 lower bidders, both refused to meet that requirement, that we were obligated to come before you this evening with the recommendation that we have.
Anybody
I
else?
hadn't- you just turned my
Alderman
light on.
Rainey? I'm sorry.
I couldn't agree more with Alderman Grover. And you made one misstatement, and that is, we're not helping Evanston residents because these other firms are from God knows where. I mean, the closest is Northbrook. But there's Brownsville, Wisconsin, Bridgeview, Illinois, and Chesterfield, Missouri. Let's see, Bridgeview is in situ, Chesterfield, Missouri is in situ form. This doesn't make any, I mean, you cannot look at this and justify the policy. So while we have to operate under the policy, I guess, unless the council agrees to waive or suspend the rules or whatever, but there is just no way to explain that this helps minorities more than choosing in situ form or choosing the next lowest responsive bidder, and then providing them with an opportunity to perhaps train somebody we select to have them train, a couple of people, something like that. But this is crazy. And in situ form is one of my favorite vendors.
And Madam Chair, Alderman Rainey, I think the quandary your staff has is that you provide us with policies to
Yeah, we
follow. And if the council feels in this instance it's appropriate to do something as we've done in the past, where we've made some adjustments and allowances to use that money, I believe Mr. Stonebeck was for an additional
Last year,
apprentice position.
yes, last year, instead of, City Council awarded the project to the low bidder, and then an apprentice was hired at the Utilities Department in lieu of awarding with the LEP program. We still have that apprentice at the Utility Department now. We also have 4 more apprentices programmed to be hired out of our regular budget. To hire a 6th apprentice becomes strenuous on our staff to have 6 unskilled people at the plant at one time. So,
And then that, I think, also made it less of a, as we looked at the options to recommend to you, that was also taken into consideration. But certainly, we understand, and we certainly grapple with the same issue. However, at some point, it's very difficult for us to constantly come back to the council and say, we recommend not following your policy.
I absolutely
And so if the council feels that you'd like to either hold this a meeting and allow us to come back with an alternate that's perhaps not the same with the apprentice, but another alternative, we'd be happy to do that. But again, our comfort level in continuing to come to you and ask you to waive your policies, I think we're no longer comfortable doing that.
Okay, I have 2 more lights, Alderman Brathwaite and then Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I can see both sides of this, and I sit behind here and we approve a lot of bills with waivers. Perfect example is the road, and so I know that we've used in situ form in the past, and I think they've been a very good company. I mean, it says here that the staff has been satisfied with the quality of their work, so I hope that if we are going with them as the highest bidder, that in addition to the MWEB requirement, that we're also paying attention to the quality of the work. So if you all want to hold it and discuss it and examine it every single way, let's do it. We'll hold it and, I mean, put your questions out that you want answered, and then we'll deal with them whether in the committee or through staff, whatever your pleasure is.
Okay, Alderman Grover and then Alderman Rainey, and then I have a question as well.
Thank you, Alderman Braithwaite. So often in these cases, it's our policy, the underlying, principles behind the MWEB policy that is kind of often closely aligned with the way the bids come in. In this case, there seems to be such a difference, and I'd rather see $40,000, $44,000 put back in Director Stonebeck's budget to do other things and take the lowest bid. And although staff may not be comfortable waiving our MWEBE requirements in this case, I think I'm comfortable, especially if the price tag is such a significant percentage of the total contract on this one. What was our guideline before on these? 5%, 10%? If the bid was in, in another case, within 5%, that you went with the, what was it, local
Well,
employment?
there's no local
Right.
Evanston bidder on this one.
There isn't, but, I mean, just having that in mind, this one is so skewed beyond even
Yeah.
that.
Well, and Alderman Grover,
So-
members of the committee, I think staff had come up with sort of its own sort of a benchmark. And I think over time, as we've had these discussions with contract after contract, I'll be honest, I've just not felt comfortable us kind of making that own benchmark, what's too much. If the council wishes to provide additional direction to us by amending the policy, then we'll certainly follow that. But staff was kind of saying, well, it's only 10,000. Oh, but if it's 20,000, or if it's only 30,000, my recommendation to Mr. Stonebeck was that I no longer felt comfortable having to come up with that benchmark every time, and I'd rather just reject it and have you provide us additional direction.
Can someone work the numbers? What percentage is 44,000 of the,
Well, I guess
You know-
if
you
if
know
we're
what I
going to look
mean?
at this, and for it to make sense to me,
Yeah.
I'd also want to know, based on their qualifications, I don't want to call any names of the companies, but looking at a 267 means absolutely nothing if the company isn't qualified. And so typically, staff will rank these things to help us to understand based on their own qualifications. So if we were to exclude the MWE compliance, I'd like to know where in such a form, since we have used them in the past, where do they rank in terms of their qualifications, Mr. Stonebeck?
Well, but I
as it
think these
relates
are all
to-
pre-qualified, aren't they? The pre-qualified?
Well, even if they are pre-qualified, Alderman Rainey, we're still used to seeing on some of our previous bids that I look at, I'm able to see how staff scores them. I think for me, that's just as important as the MWEB requirement, maybe even more important, to be honest. So if we're going to hold it, then let's get the questions
kind of
out there
information.
and have staff come back, and then we'll look at it fairly.
that would be the piece of information that I'd want to know, assuming they're
Absolutely.
pre-qualified. Right. I suppose, where are they ranking on all those criteria? And I'm guessing that they are all qualified, responsible bidders on this?
And Alderman Grover, members of the committee, that's
So we'll-
really the only measure that we use.
Yeah.
Well,
So there
then
is, there is
let-
no additional qualification. If they're qualified to bid, then it's truly a dollar and cents issue. We would not ask, again, we've had these discussions with you previously about this type of work. We've asked you to pre-qualify because we feel that it's important to have a qualified vendor, and that is why the folks were there.
And-
Mr. Stonebeck, I'm sorry,
I was going to
I'm
say,
answering all the
let
questions.
Director Stonebeck reply, and then we'll get you, Alderman Rainey.
This is a bid, not a request for a proposal. So I believe what you're referring to is on other projects, you see a ranking, and that's when it's a request for a proposal. As a straight bid, we don't rank in that manner. But Kenny has successfully completed a number of projects in Evanston and does as good as work as in situ form. There is no difference between the firms, in my opinion, on their ability to complete the job on time and within cost.
Okay. Alderman Rainey?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Kenny, but he is first on the list here, and the lowest bidder. I noticed lately that Kenny's bids have been very high on various projects that he's bid on. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But what I think would be helpful, and Alderman Braithwaite, if you could take this very specific case to the MWEB committee and say, Alderman Grover raised this. Does it really make financial sense to do this when we could take this extra money, hire somebody else, take this extra money, and be very specific about how we use it to aid in minority women in Evanston business training?
Yeah.
I would really like to have their support on something like this.
Sure.
But if they can't, at least give us some thought.
Yeah.
Their best thinking.
Do you want to make a formal referral, or you just want us to
Well,
take it on?
you're
I
the
find it
boss.
very
Aren't you the
interesting, and
chair?
we'll look into
Yeah.
it. And we'll come back to this committee, and if need be, make a report to council.
I mean, to make a referral to a non-standing
Yeah.
vote.
No, I got
so
you.
I'm in favor.
I got you. We'll take it on.
Alderman Holmes, I would just ask Mr. Stonebeck what the time frame is on the bid.
Do we have time to?
We do, but the sewers to be rehabilitated on this specific project are under streets being resurfaced this year. So we're trying to get this out in advance because I believe that Public Works will be coming very soon to award the street resurfacing. So
Next
we'd like to
meeting?
fix the sewer before they pave the street
Yeah,
to make
yeah.
sure it doesn't collapse.
We meet
Do it
this
next
month.
There is a month time if we did this the first
Yeah.
council meeting in February.
Okay. Yeah. Alderman Grover, I have you again, right?
Yeah, just real quick, and then Mr. Bobquist, Director Stonebeck, you'd be looking simply for an explicit waiver from the city council on the MWEBE requirement on this contract?
As part of the
If
motion.
that's
And
what the-
and we would work with the Corporation Council to make sure that whatever findings need to be
If that's
made
what we,
are appropriate
if that's the
findings.
direction we're heading, because that's the direction I'm heading in, unless there's some information that is
And-
not
And
apparent now.
hopefully, Alderman Grover, members of the committee, additional guidance to your staff, how to handle something like this in the future.
Yeah.
If there's a dollar amount that is a threshold or a percentage value of a contract, that would be helpful to know as well.
Don't like policies that make staff that uncomfortable. It's got to still work. The policy has to still work.
Well, and I think our, and
We need to be
think
pragmatic about this.
what you're hearing from us, Alderman Grover, members of the committee, is just our discomfort sort of being in the middle between multiple stated policies of the city council. It's not really ours to judge which stated policy is more important than another stated policy. So if you could help us sort through that, we want to do what makes sense too, but there's multiple answers to that question sometimes.
And I would think, since Kenny has a history with us by now, that they would know that we have this policy. And so I'm wondering what the waiver, I'm looking beyond, but that kind of information would be very helpful for me in terms of where they are with this, because they want city business. I would think that they would be willing to meet us halfway on some of this as well. So it's just not all on the city, I would think. I mean, they're a big company. So I think that's another way that we should look at it. Alderman Rainey?
Maybe it's time to have a visit with our pre-selected contractors and remind them of our requirements. They know what they are because they're dealing with them in other communities. But if we could just remind them, because we're getting a lot of, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that. So maybe we could do that.
Okay. Anything else? So we're going to hold this? You want to hold it in committee?
Yes, please.
Okay, all right, we'll hold this in committee
Until February 9?
until the first meeting in February.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. That was Alderman Burris. Alderman Rainey, you're on for A 3.3.
Madam Chair and Committee, A 3.3 is approval of an amendment to the agency agreement with Northwestern University for the management of our natural gas purchase and amendment to the agreement for the purchase of natural gas for 16 city-owned buildings. And I think there's a strike price below 410 per million BTUs.
Second.
And that is from September 2016 through August 31, 2021.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Alderman Rainey.
Yes. I want to know, I read this report about how good Northwestern is at, natural gas futures, et cetera, but how in the world can we set a strike price when I think today the price was like $3 for the same amount of gas? I just don't understand the futures market to that extent that I can know whether 410 is a good price or not. What have they told us about that?
Well, I also have the opportunity to sit with the meetings with the supplier as well and understand their strategy, and it's supported by the backing from Northwestern University as well. The future market is something that's really out there, but just like gas prices at the pump right now are near historic lows in the recent past, so are natural gas prices. It has to do with the volume of storage that they have on hand, how much they are injecting into storage, and where they think future gas use will be. And that's all used to come up with these projections as to when the best price to purchase will be. They also indicate the number of activities that they think that will take place during this time frame, with a lot of natural gas cogeneration plants being constructed, not only here in the United States, but at several other countries. And they just feel that if we purchase for this time, that we'll get past that higher demand of natural gas with these cogen plants being brought up, the production will stabilize again. And in that time period, it makes sense to go out to the market again.
Alderman Rainey?
Well, I'm just wondering if we have any evidence or research shows that there were any analysts who forecasted $3 for January 2015, or gas would be in the city of Evanston under, $3 a gallon. I just think that it's interesting, and I'm going to support this. I just wanted to know who the soothsayer was and how they can possibly determine, given the volatility in this market, how $4 and whatever it is, 15 cents, whatever is a good strike price for 2016. And is it set for the years from 2016 to 2020? Is it set, or does it fluctuate?
Well, this would lock us into
Would lock us
that
into
price.
that price,
And again,
right.
that's for 70% of what they estimate Evanston will use based on historic.
And it could be 410. I mean, it could be 405, right?
That is correct. And so they're going to watch the market on a daily basis, and when it gets to 410, they'll be watching it on an hourly basis, and then they'll make a recommendation to Northwestern. Northwestern, when they say yes, then they'll call us and say, this is what Northwestern did. And having this on hand then allows me to go to the city manager and say, please execute. They do look at this. There is a trend as well in cost, and in February is when the projection made several years ago showed that this will be at a low point as well. So we were talking about this as long as 9 months ago, as trying to establish this as the price. The very warm December helped push the market down some, and that's why they believe that the strike price will be coming in the near future, late January, early February. It's not there now for the futures.
Seeing no more lights? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm sorry, no aye. I'm not voting on it.
Oh,
I
I'm
apologize.
I didn't, okay, so that's 4 and
One
1.
abstention. Madam Chair, I move A 3.4, which is our approval of a contract with Hipskin Technology Solutions Group for City of Evanston's computer data storage area network. This is for hardware and software licensing to accommodate our increasing data storage requirements, including, as a surprise to me, the data produced from over 200 cameras the city hosts. And the amount of the contract is $250,396.16.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Alderman Brethwaite?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm going to look at this bid a little bit differently as well. Ms. Calderon, are you around? I read here that the awardee, Hapskin, is a Dell Premier Partner, and I'm just curious to know, maybe in your best guess, why they were the only bidder to respond.
Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members. It was a bit of a surprise that they were the only company to respond to the bid. We had about 15 different companies in the pre-bid meeting. Not really sure why they were the only ones to respond, to be honest. There were some other Dell partners there. There were also some Hewlett-Packard and other hardware vendors as well, but through the bid itself, we were very specific that we wanted Dell hardware. Yeah, but I was very surprised, though, as well, that we only received one bid.
Alderman Rainey?
Do you think they tried to get away with a higher price with us? I mean, do you think they were done, they thought we were just going to let it go and accept the high bid?
No, I don't think
The
so,
only bid?
because based off the pre-bid meeting, which Hipskind attended, it was I would have guessed that there would have been multiple bids, so I don't think it would have been in their best favor to have done
No,
that.
the point, okay, so that bid came in when they didn't know that there would be no other bids.
Correct.
Yeah, that's- And then when they found out there weren't any other bids, they looked, see, this doesn't make any sense. They lowered their price.
The way they lower the price is actually, I brought in Dell to talk about
Right.
some other projects, and Dell and I kind of coordinated and spec'd out the bid accordingly to fit within a set budget. So I did kind of ask them and saying, oh, this bid came in,
Yeah.
it was a little bit higher than usual, and they, being the only bidder, they were able to work some magic, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
like minus, yeah. Did we reduce our specs?
no, that's the exact hardware that we wanted. That was in the bid.
Good for you, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Alderman Brathwaite?
That was my question. I was going to ask, how do we know that we're getting the best price possible? But you satisfied that, and that's what she asked. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I want to go back to A 3.3 because the vote is 4-4 and one abstention, if I'm not mistaken, right? It wasn't against, it was an abstention.
Abstention, sorry, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I recorded that correctly.
Supposed to explain why you're.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
I chose not to vote on it because I am employed by Northwestern University. I know
And
this
that's
comes
what
as a shock
reminded
to
me, because
everyone.
when you said 4-1, I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's not
Sorry.
right. Okay, that's okay.
Sorry about that.
We caught it. That's the most important thing. Okay, so it's been moved and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, A4, approval of change order number 1 for 2014 CIPP sewer rehabilitation contract bid 14-41, and the change order will increase the amount for InSitraForm Technologies in the contract amount by $28,474,000 from $230,584 to $259,058. This will extend the contract duration by 61 days from November 30th, 2014 to January 30th, 2015. It's been moved in second. I see no lights. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, Alderman Brathwaite. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move item A5, the ordinance 109-0-14, adding Title III, Chapter 31 regarding transportation network providers. Staff submits the ordinance 109-0-14 for the City Council consideration. City staff was directed to draft an ordinance to regulate the transportation network providers such as Uber, Sidecar, and Lyft. City staff reviewed and considered comparable rideshare statutes from similarly situated jurisdictions, including the recently enacted Chicago ordinance, and this is for introduction.
Okay, is there a second? Alderman Grover? Are you second? I didn't hear a second. City Manager?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, we're looking for direction. We have an interesting circumstance where we have a business operating that's not lawfully allowed to operate. And so we are trying to have a way for them to lawfully operate. If the ordinance before the committee does not make sense, we will then instruct the Corporation Council and the Police Department to begin enforcement action against these riders. My sense of the community is they like these operations and that it would make sense for us to have them have an ability to operate legally. I would encourage the committee, if the ordinance before you does not to your liking, to provide direction to staff so that we can craft something that will allow for them to operate legally.
I have lots of lights, so I will second so that we can get to a discussion. Otherwise, we can't talk about it. So Alderman Brathwaite, Alderman Grover, Alderman Grover, Alderman Brathwaite, and Alderman Rainey.
Thank you, Mr. Bobkowitz. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm interested in knowing the regulatory structure that we have in place for taxi cabs and our licensing costs and other requirements, and how do they compare? I'd like it to be a level playing field if we're going to undertake some regulation of these transportation network providers. And so for me, the complete picture is understanding how we regulate taxi cabs as well.
Certainly. And Chair Holmes, we'd be happy to bring back additional information. One of the challenges we're having along with communities around America is that the form for which we regulate taxis is not compatible with the business model that these other companies are using. So communities all over America are grappling with how do you deal with a company that operates as a company where the previous model is licensing of individual vehicles. Again, we are certainly not new to this. Other communities around have attempted to do that. Rather than reinvent the wheel, we have tried to look at the regulations that make sense for our neighbor to the south, the city of Chicago. Again, it's a policy question for the city council. If you feel these folks should be operating, we would encourage the council to adopt an ordinance that will allow us to regulate them. If you don't feel they should be allowed to lawfully operate, then we will begin enforcement action so that they don't. Communities who have tried to do that have it's a lot of time, energy, and effort. And so my sense from previous discussions was that there was an interest to have some sort of regulation, so we're attempting to move that forward. But we'd be happy to bring back the particulars of our licensing, but basically it's an annual fee per vehicle. And so the licensing is done by vehicle, where the Uber and Lyft model is a different model where they do not have individual vehicles that are assigned to jurisdictions as a taxi cab would.
Well, we may have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, I
on
was
this.
has the insurance industry clicked in on this yet, or no? I would think that there would be big insurance problems with this.
And communities around in other places that have adopted regulation have required insurance from the company, from this third-party operator versus insurance from the individual operator. So that is how they've done it. Again, Mr. Farrar, I'm not sure what the order of magnitude of communities around America that have already grappled with this, but I would imagine it's easily dozens that have adopted ordinances dealing with these shared transportation providers. Is that a good approximation?
Mr. Manager, Chair Holmes, and members of the committee, Grant Farrar Corporation Counsel, there have been dozens of jurisdictions that have adopted different approaches to all of this. Consistently, what appears to be happening right now is the communities are moving towards regulation as opposed to prohibiting the operation. And the communities that regulate, such as Chicago, upon which this ordinance is modeled upon, impose a fee upon the company. It's not the individual driver. The insurance requirements that are in the ordinance before you are pretty strong based upon the Chicago model. And it also follows a lot of the trend in recent case law in terms of maintaining, having the company maintain coverage while the operation, while the driver has the application open and is performing the service. So we feel reasonably comfortable that the insurance coverage as set forth in the ordinance would address the issue that you just raised, Chair Holmes, and also provide a level of consistency and clarity for prospective users of the service.
Alderman Breathwaite, and then Alderman Rainey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also agree, Alderman, it would be interesting to see what we charge our current taxis in town. And I guess my question to Mr. Farrar is, you mentioned that you've looked at other communities. I'd be curious to know what other community fee structures are as well.
I can actually answer that. The fee per licensed cab right now is $250 per vehicle. There are 140 licensed cabs, so if you do the math, that's approximately a $35,000 fee. So, but that again, that is, it's an individual fee set according to each vehicle. Here, the fee is going to the licensee, which is the prospective company. In terms of fees assessed in other jurisdictions, as a matter of policy, we took the same fee that was set forth in the Chicago ordinance. So that's where we came up with this fee right now. In terms of other jurisdictions, I've seen fees range between $5,000, $2,000. I believe that Austin, Texas has $500. Springfield, Illinois just passed a transportation network provider ordinance last week the fee for that provider is $500. So it's really all across the board.
Gotcha. So maybe I'm not reading this carefully enough. So would it be 25 per company? Because I read it for 25 per driver.
Per company.
No, correct. It's for it's for the
So
service
And a
provider.
company could have, thank you.
And there's no limit to the number of vehicles.
That's the
that we
part
serve.
that the math wasn't making sense.
Alderman Rainey?
Well, I think it would be interesting to know all the details about how we operate our taxi licensing. However, the point of Uber and these other ride-sharing operations is to not be like taxis. And being a regular user, as I've mentioned before, they are not like other taxis. They are especially not like our taxis that we claim are overly regulated, overly inspected, and I would guess that 8 out of 10 of our taxis are vehicles you would not want to ride in. And I'm not speaking about the drivers. That's a whole different issue. But the ride sharing is not the same. And I'm not going to support anything that makes them comparable to taxis. They're not the same. There is going to be a day when all taxis are like Uber, and we know that. Just one brief explanation, one little story. At 4:20 a.m. on December 29, I called for an Uber. At 4:25 a.m., an Uber car, hot and clean, was in front of my house to take me to O'Hare Airport. It cost me $20 from my house on Hull Terrace to O'Hare Airport. The cab driver, the Uber driver came and got my suitcase, put it in the car, took it out, and put it up by the check-in. That does not happen routinely with a taxi cab. And it was half the price at least. And I called almost less than 5 minutes before it showed up. You can fight that any way you want, but I do believe Uber and the other rideshare programs are going to prevail over the traditional taxi business. And until the traditional taxi business gets its act in order and starts acting like Uber, then there's going to be this conflict.
And Alderman Holmes, Alderman Rainey, members of the committee, your staff agrees. We only ask that if this form of transportation is going to be used by our residents, that it be done as safely and responsibly as possible from our perspective. And as we look at other communities around America, they have seen fit to come up with a regulatory structure that has been accepted by these companies. So we felt that by duplicating the structure that the City of Chicago has would be a reasonable suggestion to you. Clearly, the cost is all over the map, and perhaps it might be an opportunity, if you'd like us to bring this back, we could also come back to you with some alternatives as far as annual fees associated with this. But please don't misunderstand our intent here. Our intent is that this is something that our residents want. We want to make them be able to operate lawfully. We want to be able to have appropriate information on file, have insurance on file, something that other communities have requested through their ordinances and received. We feel that that's a reasonable thing for Evanston as well.
Okay, well, this is for introduction. I was going to say, do you want to hold in a committee until February?
So we don't want to?
We'll give some time. I mean,
So Alderman Holmes, my understanding, the committee's asking for some additional information about how we currently regulate taxis in Evanston, which Mr. Farr easily can do. And then we can recite the ordinance as written. And come back with, I think Mr. Farr is giving you a good sense of the fees,
Right.
that they're a little bit all over the map, and I think there is no particular rule of thumb, but we can put that into writing and make that available for your next meeting.
okay. Well, not the next meeting, maybe the February. The next meeting is January 26th. You're thinking that one? or February?
Again, Alderman Holmes, members of the committee, I am concerned that we've allowed these folks to not operate lawfully, and so either I
Okay,
would
I
encourage
get
the
you.
council to have a law in place to allow them to operate lawfully, or we need to begin to think about enforcement.
I got you. Alderman Burris and then Alderman Rainey.
Why do we have to do anything? I mean, they've been working, I don't think we've had any incidents in Evanston, and I just see it as very entrepreneurial and innovative, and I think we're trying to squash innovation by over-regulating, and I just don't understand why we just can't. They've been doing it for how many years now in Evanston? I'm not sure that we need to do anything, so, and
And
this
Alderman
seems like
Burris, my challenge is that there's any number of municipal services and enforcements that you could say that about. This council has regulated individuals calling and requesting a ride for a very long time. That's what this is. Your staff agrees, I think, with the sentiment I'm hearing on the committee, that this is something our residents benefit from. If we have a regulatory structure that has been embraced by these companies and works in other communities, that would seem to make sense. It's just difficult to know which laws to enforce, which laws not to enforce, things
No,
that aren't a big deal.
Yeah, I understand where you're
It's a
coming from.
very slippery slope.
Exactly, and I guess that's where I'm concerned about the slippery slope of almost over-regulation and almost, why are we trying to, seems like a lot of money, and we can't view them as taxis in the same way, and much more of in the, almost like when we had, Kool-Aid stands and lemonade stands, and we had our health department go out and regulate them, and we were like, well, that's crazy. Or the people selling the Girl Scout cookies, and we were trying to regulate them. It's like, I just think we don't have to necessarily follow the model of what other municipalities are doing. We talk about innovation and entrepreneurship. Let's try to think
And-
outside
and-
the
But we
box.
also have to be
Madam-
careful until something happens in Evanston, and then we have an issue. But I'm sorry, I got Rainey, Grover, and Breathwaite.
Mr. City Manager, why is it illegal? Have you told us that?
Because it's not legal.
But why is it not legal?
Because right now, we have an ordinance that specifies how taxi operations work.
Not a taxi.
Again, in the courts and other communities around the United States, the courts have disagreed.
We
And
need to
what-
take a leadership role here. It's not a taxi, and we don't telephone them to get service. So, I mean, I think that's two very distinctive
How do you get the
differences.
service if you don't
You
contact them?
only use, you email. You
But
use-
that's a contact,
You use a
though.
location. It's a contact, but you cannot telephone them. You cannot telephone them for service. You can only talk to them after you get service. Secondly, could you give us the rules and regulations imposed on Uber drivers in order to be a driver?
We can certainly request that from the company.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to know. Because we may be worrying about something.
Members of the committee, in terms of the rules and regulations, I think that what's important here is that there was some buy-in by the companies on the Chicago ordinance. So again, we took the Chicago language, so they know about the requirements for the background check, they know about compliance issues. With respect to the issue of legality, again, the courts and other jurisdictions, several jurisdictions have handled this issue over many years. They have all concluded, and I agree with their assessment, that this is not a cab. If it's not a cab, what is it? And if it isn't a cab, should it be licensed and regulated in some way when it uses the public way, when it's going to residents and providing a service? Again, as the city attorney, I'm always concerned about liability. If someone is driving the streets and gets into an accident and has no insurance coverage, they're not necessarily going to be looking to sue the Uber driver. They're going to be looking to sue the city like everybody else does every other day around here.
Why would they do that? If somebody rents into me tonight on the way home and they're not insured, I'm not going to be looking to the city to go after them. I mean, I think you're really stretching it. But anyway.
Alderman Grover, Alderman Burris, Alderman Grover, Alderman Breathwaite, and then Alderman Burris again.
I think it's a question of how you regard it. Do you regard these as network service providers, transportation networks, or do you regard them as micro-entrepreneurs? And if they're micro-entrepreneurs, then maybe our oversight our impulse to have oversight for insurance and other regulation ought to be scaled to micro entrepreneurs. I'm just not there yet. I think I need more information about how they operate, but it's
One of the challenges is that these individuals do not operate as individuals. They operate under the framework
As
of
part
this
of a
larger
network.
multi-million-dollar
network, right.
corporation. Again, Madam Chair, members of the committee, our intention is just to clarify things, and if the council, we'll bring back the requested information. I believe we can do that in 2 weeks, or would you like to wait till?
2 weeks.
So we'll do that in 2 weeks. If the council ultimately does not choose to do that, I think that we would likely make some findings that the council is choosing not to do that. And so if there's any further action against the city of Evanston, that the record is perfectly clear in that, either by those who have licensed taxi cabs or individuals who may otherwise be injured. Again, our job as your staff is to bring these issues before you. Every other community that we're aware of has taken some action. If this council feels no action is appropriate, that's fine, but it's our responsibility to have this discussion with you. So Alderman Holmes, we're happy to come back in 2 weeks.
Okay, well, I still have lights, so Alderman, did we just get you, Grover? Brathwaite, and then Burth.
In the interest of time, I guess I can hold my question. I am interested in more information. I was just going to compare this to the issue that we dealt with the street scavengers several years ago, and no real desire to regulate them. But it's getting late, and I think we need to move on.
Okay. Alderman Burth?
Thanks. So while we're looking at this, what about carpoolers that carpool from Evanston maybe to downtown Chicago, and maybe there's 4 of them and only one person drives and the 3 others pay that driver for gas to carpool them down? Are we going to regulate them? Are we going to regulate the local parents who carpool, and maybe one of the parents actually helps with the, pay for the gas for the carpool for the students because they can't, maybe they have to go to work. I mean, it's like, then we're like sort of regulating everybody. It's like, oh, you're riding together and you're paying someone for gas, or, I'm a designated driver, let's say, when a group of us go out to a bar or something, and then people are going to pay me for gas. Are we going to regulate that? I just think we're starting to regulate a little bit too much. And if we're going to talk about carpools, I'm sure there's a ton of carpools here in Evanston that make their way downtown, and I'm sure that there is money exchanged as well. So we might want to look at that as if we're going to talk about, are we worried about the carpool? If somebody happens to the carpool, is somebody going to sue the city because we didn't regulate the carpools?
Well, the difference, though, I think, Alderman Burth, in this case, is that they operate under a company. It's not, I don't think carpoolers or mothers groups that transport each other operate
I don't know.
under a company.
Moms
So I
are
think
pretty
that's-
organized.
Well, yeah, they can be pretty organized. I know I've been in those kind of carpools, and you have to make sure you're on time and take your turn. That's for sure. So I think that's our last, so we're holding this in committee until January 26th. Okay? Okay. Who's next? Alderman Burth?
I ask you to move A6, ordinance 124-0-14, amending Title 10, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Chapter 6, Traffic Schedules, Section 2B, authority to remove vehicles that are obstructing a fire hydrant and providing 48-hour notice when temporary tow signs are posted.
It's been moved and second, seeing no lights. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A7, Alderman Rainey?
A7 is ordinance, 7015, Residential Exemption Parking District B. This amends the city code to include 2-hour parking limits between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. on Church Street and Hinman Avenue.
It's been moved and second, seeing no lights. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Alderman Grover?
Madam Chair, I move A8, which is ordinance 143-014, decreasing the number of Class D liquor licenses for Carmen's of Evanston at 1241 Chicago Avenue due to the fact that they are no longer in business. I think we'll be moving to suspend and take action on this tonight to get it off our agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Seeing no lights, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alderman Rainey, would you like to do AA?
I surely would. And I just want to mention that Ann Carlson, a new owner to be soon, is in the audience, and I don't know if she signed up to say anything. No? Okay. This is ordinance 1015. This authorizes the city manager to negotiate with Ward 8 LLC for the sale of city-owned real property located at 629, 631 Howard Street.
Second.
Alderman Rainey.
Yes. On behalf of Ann Carlson and Cody Modier, the operators of Ward 8, which is a cocktail lounge, at this address, while the ordinance or the agreement required the purchase of this building, the decision to purchase the building after 3 years, it's a 5-year lease. I just wanted to point out that the business has only been operating for 2 years, and this was just their anniversary. And I think it's just an amazing task that they performed in developing the very first, they're the pioneers. They're the very first people to come down to Howard Street to do something, quote unquote, outside the box. And to have also reached out to other entrepreneurs around the city and the region to invite them in to see what can be done on that street, and specifically Peckish Pig. They were the ones really who attracted Peckish Pig. And Paul Letko of Few reached out to Ann and Cody when they were on Clark Street, invited them in. So it's been a very interesting circle of entrepreneurs who have really made it in this town. And I couldn't be more proud of them. So let's vote for this and suspend the rules. Move to suspend the
I
rules
have
also.
one more light. Alderman Burrs.
I just want to echo what Alderman Rainey said about how quickly this has happened, and a big thank you not only to Alderman Rainey's leadership on Howard Street, but to the Economic Development Department on moving this along and helping the various businesses. And congratulations to Ward 8.
Okay. Seeing, Alderman Rainey.
There, I don't want to talk about the criticism that has come out, but there has been debate back and forth about the city helping businesses. And as I read some of the comments lately about other projects, not even about this project, because this now is stale and nobody's paying any attention to Ward 8. They're just so busy you can't even get in there and get a seat. But some of the other comments about other projects around town. And I was explaining to someone earlier tonight that the commentary is, when you read it, it's as though they're talking about something else. And I was thinking, if I didn't know any of the details, I might say some of the really bizarre and far out criticisms that are made. But the fact is, if people would just, before you write a scathing comment in Evanston Now or Pioneer Press or any place, why don't you call, and I'm appealing to everybody out there, why don't you make one phone call to an alderman or to the economic development director or to the city manager and ask to have a conversation about this? And you might find out that all of the things you're saying that we should do, we've been doing. Did you ever think of having a Starbucks at the Dairy Queen? Oh, no, that never crossed our minds. We never thought of it. It's just, you're just wasting your energy. Just make a call, talk to somebody out there who's involved, and they'll share everything that they've been doing or want to do or have tried to do. And that's all I'm saying, because it just creates this cycle of craziness and also myths and falsities that just create more and more chaos. And most of it is just so far off base. But anybody who wants to call me and talk about the Dairy Queen, call me. I just read about 20 comments about how stupid we are in the Dairy Queen, and I can't wait to talk to you.
Well, let's get the sale of
Well, I just,
629 and 631
you
taken care of.
know, Madam Chair, this suffered tremendous attacks
Absolutely.
from every,
But look at us now. So it's
and
being
look,
solved.
no, not look at us, but look at the operators. Look how
Absolutely.
successful they've been. And so, all right, sorry, I'll try to be quiet.
Okay, seeing no more lights, all in favor? Any opposed? I'm not sure about that, but yeah, yes, Mr. Farrar said yes. Okay, we do have a short PowerPoint presentation, but first, we had one non-agenda item, Mr. Risky, one comment. So I'm going to have a citizen's comment now for that before we do the PowerPoint.
Thank you. I think the aldermen have received the report on the water plant improvements for the Clearwell and the reservoir, which has now been posted on the city website. While this is going to be discussed in probably several weeks, I think it's important to bring up some points tonight, and I'm not going into the report, but really what I want to talk about is council members should understand the report does not give you any better information than you really had before to make a decision on which option to select. The report also does not really relieve you of the responsibility of personally taking the time to really understand what's going on at the water utility. I believe 3 steps need to be taken before you start to pick an option, really, and you're really going to be talking about huge water bills increases. Step 1, really, the city must hire an independent business consultant to analyze the water utility as a real business. Everyone needs to understand over 80% of the water here that is produced at the plant is sold. And Evanston residents are not the primary users of the water. The utility department should not be involved in the selection of the consultant because it clearly has a vested interest in this, of maintaining the status quo. In the process of the evaluation, the business needs to be broken down into distribution, which really is the pipes under the street that give the water to the Evanston residents, and the water plant. The Evanston residents really are the ratepayers for the distribution. The water plant, we're only 20% of really the users. The business should really be evaluated using the current contracts to see if there is any profit at all, or we're subsidizing it. The following options probably need to be considered along with some others. The status quo, of course, downsizing it, selling it to the other users, as the Evanston residents, it would only be a 20% ownership, and even eventually shutting it down, which these are all options, of course, but all options need to be considered financially to understand what's really going on. In step 2 of this council really must separate out the plant capital and the distribution capital as part of step 1, really, and understand what's going on with the money here. I don't believe we've been given a full picture of the capital needs with all the piping under the street and how much that would be cost to replace all that piping has ever really been discussed as a long-range plan against your real costs of running a business. And if you start to add in that piping, the distribution, and this possible business, you're going to have to look at, you'll understand maybe as what option you might pick. And finally, I want to talk about step 3, and that is what future rate increases are going to cover this. Council members, I know, have been worried for some time about the pensions, but that involves a small majority of the police and firefighters, but the water involves everyone in Evanston. We have seen 44% water bill increases over the last 5 years, and that's effective, and it's cumulative. But they're really in the 2 options that are going to be considered. We're talking a $3 to $5 million option, which would raise water rates 3.5% to 5%. Really looking at that that's a big picture option that you can understand. And really, if you're going to replace this tank, it's 20 to 30 million. And I think in the thing of report, we'll get into that later, of course, as we go along. That's a 24% to 36% water bill increase on the users here. Given the water utility has not really captured all these costs, there are more water increases to come. I know at ANPW on the 27th, this is going to be presented, and an option will be suggested by staff. But without what I said here in these 3 steps, you really don't, picking an option is really not very acceptable because you really don't know what's going on. And I've heard aldermen up here say they don't know what's going on. So really, if you don't know what's going on, you really need to understand what's going on, because are the residents going to be saddled with further and further increases here? That
Mr.
may
Risky,
be not
could you
true.
begin to wrap up?
All
Because
right,
I have
well.
one more item.
All right, and that's really what I'm saying, because you have that responsibility to understand what's going on here. Thank you.
Okay. The PowerPoint for the newspaper boxes.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Director Stonebeck, Rajiv Dal, Senior Project Manager. I'll briefly go over a couple of PowerPoint slides and explain talk about the newspaper box consolidation program, what we've done so far, and the next steps. Here's a photo of the multi-compartment stand that we installed. The top 3 boxes are for coin-operated paid publications. The bottom 3 have been divided into 6 spaces to accommodate free publications. We also added a dome top that allows for water and snow runoff, and more importantly, it deters people from leaving litter on top. Program rules. Publications have to apply for a permit. The permit application is on the website, and they can call 311 for seek more information. They need to identify the publication, provide contact information, and provide the preferred locations. We'll remove the permit and issue the permit if there's space available in the boxes. The permit is required to be renewed at the end of the calendar year. That allows us to have some sort of control. If they cease publication, then we can assign that to somebody else. Or if we're having issues with them, then gives us more leeway to talk to them. Once they get the permit space and put their publication in our box, then they have to remove their individual rack in the area. We've also asked them to maintain the boxes in clean condition. Here's a before and after photo of on Chicago Avenue by Church Street in front of Whole Foods. As you can see, it was cluttered before with the news racks. Now the clutter has been reduced or taken care of, and we provided more walkable space. Last year, we installed 7 the boxes, 3 on Church and 4 on Davis Street. We sent letters to 24 publications and asked them to identify 3 preferred locations. I did get a call from a few concerned about limiting the number of locations, and they wanted to know if they could apply for more than 3. I did advise them that they could, depending on the number of applications we receive and the availability of space, we may be able to accommodate them. So far, we've received 15 applications, issued permit to 3 paid and 12 free publications. There are boxes for 3 paid publications at 2 locations, and for 6 free publications at 4 locations. But I did get a call on Friday, so that 6 free publication location may be going down to 2 or 3. Our estimate is we've removed about 84 individual racks in the downtown area. But last week we did find 3 of the boxes creep back on Davis Street by Maple, by Benison's, and we've asked them to remove the boxes because our boxes are on either side of the block. Next steps. These are estimate of number of racks that are out there in the other shopping areas, and number of boxes that we think will be required to consolidate them. And we want to do them all this year, spring, summer, and fall. Here's a map of the proposed locations. The one in the middle, 7, they've been completed. Actually, we're working on a map to make it a little bit more clear to people. Those 7 locations will have a different color saying that it's been completed, and the other will have a different color saying it's future installation. Our estimate is going to cost us about $40,000 to do the this list right here. And the funding source, we recommend to you spend $25,000 from the CIP Prison Safety budget and another $15,000 from general fund, street maintenance fund. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I see no lights. So I guess that is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That concludes our agenda. Could we have a motion to adjourn? And I believe planning and development is actually scheduled to start probably in the next 5 minutes. You give that to? Yes, I don't know who. Jessica. Jessica tonight, okay.